Hello and welcome to episode 3 of our practices for 2021. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to view the last two that we've done, the first two that we've done, and you are somewhere in the first week of January moving on to episode 3 or practice number 3. But if not, that's okay too. Whenever you're ready to step back into the practice is fine. We're going to talk a little bit about habit forming at the beginning of the practice. And this practice will be focused mostly on our hips, doing some hip opening and some work on the lower back, releasing some of that tension in the lower back. I know a lot of guys my age are experiencing lower back problems or have experienced it, or like me, have had lower back surgery and still have herniated discs. So this practice is meant to open up that lower back a little bit, just to make the daily movements, things you do in your daily life, a little bit easier. Let's get moving. Start in an easy seated position. You can either cross at the ankles or place one foot in front of the other. The way I prefer to do it, my left heel in, my right heel in front of that one. Sitting straight upward through your spine, nice even seat on the base of your hips, your pelvis, rooted against the mat. Palms resting easy on the thighs. Lifting up through the spine, chest up, shoulders rolled back and down. Lifting up through the crown of your head. Nice little breeze going here to cool off the sunny afternoon here in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm going to enjoy this while I can, because by the time we get to next week's practices, I'll probably be chilly on the East Coast again. Close your eyes. Begin to take that focus inward through your breath. You can count the length of your inhalation. And then exhale that same number of counts. Whatever's distracting you, you can always come back to your breath. If you lose focus, start counting breaths again. It's a great, quick way to return your focus inward. This is just our third practice of the year. I know many of us are struggling with forming that new habit. The experts say that to form a new habit, it takes 21 consecutive days of repeated behaviors. So you hear anything from 21 days to 66 days to 254 days. There's all sorts of ideas out there, but the one I've heard the most is 21 days consecutive. Now, I've proposed doing 21 practices over 7 weeks, so those aren't consecutive days. But if you commit to a time of day to do the practice, and on the 4 days a week that you're not doing yoga, you could do one of a few other activities. You can at least establish the habit of setting aside an hour for yourself each day, which can be split between yoga, maybe just committing to having a positive attitude toward your day. Look toward the positive rather than the negative. Be like this shirt. Be happy. Make that your default state. The third thing you could commit to is meditation or stillness. There's a link in the show notes to a meditation podcast I have out there called Will I Om. It's a big hit in India. Shout out to my friends in India. But there's a few practices there, mostly focused on falling asleep, but I'm going to add some other meditations to that soon that'll be more for meditative purposes. more soul searching than sleeping. Although my voice has an effect on people, I hear. So commit to a certain time each day that you're going to set aside that hour. 3 days a week for now, you'll do yoga. And the other 4 days, maybe just some stillness practice, maybe listening to a meditation, maybe journaling as a means of meditation. Shut the devices off other than the one you're watching this program on. Shut the devices off and just sit with yourself or sit with the meditation guide. And just have a general positive outlook. If you can commit to that, I submit that after 7 weeks, 21 practices, but 49 days of getting up at the same time or dedicating that hour, you'll be well established into this practice, and then you can adjust it as you need. All right. Go ahead and open your eyes. From this easy seated position, let's take a deep inhalation, arms up overhead, and exhale, lean to the left side. Place your left hand on the mat, slight bend in the left elbow. Allow that bend to happen mid-back. Reaching over with your right palm facing down toward the mat. The gaze can go up toward your elbow. Next inhale, arms up again. And let's take it now to the right. Close eyes as needed for sun. Inhale back up. Exhale, we'll twist to the side. Right hand goes onto the left knee. Tent your fingers of your left hand behind you. And twisting through the spine, keeping it upright. Gaze goes back over your left shoulder. Inhale back up. Exhale to the right. Gaze goes back over the right shoulder, and if you're like me, you're eyeballing a grapefruit that'll be picked later this week. You can enjoy fresh. Sure gonna miss that next week. Inhale up. Exhale. Hands behind. You can either tent the fingers, lift the chest, roll the shoulders back, or if it's available to you, comfortable for you, you can interlace the fingers and pull the backs of your hands down toward the ground. Still pulling the shoulders back, lifting the chest up, whichever one's more comfortable for you, whichever gives you the most benefit. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, spin forward.
You can walk your fingers out ahead of you in this forward fold from the seated position. Continue to breathe through the practice. You could just sit still and breathe when you're doing yoga.
Great. Walk that back up to your easy seat. Now let's start with at the base of your spine, some torso circles, whichever direction, clockwise, counterclockwise, it matters not to me. Whichever makes you happiest, whichever one you didn't start with, guess what? We'll go that way. Right. Now, go ahead and reverse direction. Excellent. Back to that easy seated position, and whichever way your legs are crossed, go ahead and reverse those. Give the other side a fair chance, equal chance. And now we're going to do some seated cat-cows. So we've done them in previous practices from hands and knees, and we'll do that again here in a moment. And we've done them from a standing position. Now we're going to do it third variation of cat-cow from the seated position. So you can really move your hands to the front of your shins for this. Get a little stretch through your wrist as we do it as well. So on an inhale, we're tilting the pelvis forward, belly extends forward, shoulders come back. Last thing that bends back is the neck and the head. And feel it stretch through the neck. And on an exhale, tilt the pelvis forward, bring the navel to the spine, and wave through the spine. The last thing bending forward is your head, neck. Inhale, cow. Exhale, cat. Inhale, cow. Exhale, cat. And come back to your easy seat. Now we're going to go to our all fours position, tabletop position. Let's give the wrist a little bit of a warm up here as well while we're here. You have your toes tucked for this first one. Just a gentle movement back and forth. Just get a little bit of motion into our wrists. We pretty much use our wrists in every practice we do, so I really should be including this in all of them. Turn your fingers to the outside of the mat. Go in circles here, side to side. Maybe get that extension through the inner wrist and outer wrist. You can bend your fingers all the way back toward your knees. Bending at the elbows. Bending back to your heels. As we go into planks, we go into downward facing dog. If you don't stretch your wrists out first, you may find it's very easy to pinch a nerve in your wrist, particularly when you're getting a little older like moi. Now, carefully placing the backs of your hands on the mat, you can stretch the outer side of your wrist, the backs of your wrists. I've had wrist surgery to remove ganglion cysts in the past, and I continue to have a little bit of trouble with my right wrist. So rather than assume everyone watching is healthy as a fiddle, I don't think that's the line. Fit as a fiddle. But everyone has their issues. I'm going to share what mine are. If you have those too, then we'll all be benefiting from it. All right, just go ahead and roll your wrist out. Shake them out. All right, now let's come to tabletop position. You might feel a little bit better in the wrist now. And now, cat-cow pose. From this position, you can untuck your feet, untuck your toes. On an inhale, dip the belly, tip the pelvis forward, roll up through your spine. Last thing comes up is the neck, head. Excuse me. Exhale, lift the navel to the spine, tilt that pelvis back. Last thing that drops is your neck, head. Let's do 2 more of each on your own. Cow. Cat. Very good. And back to the tabletop position. We're going to sink our hips back to child's pose. If it's better for you to separate your feet, separate your knees, and settle your torso down between, go ahead and do so. Or you can have your knees and feet together. Just set back to child's pose, resting your chest on your thighs. Forehead dropping to the mat. Arms can even be extended out front or wrapping around your heels. You can return here at any time in the practice. You could pause the practice right now and just stay here for a while if you'd like. You're in control. This is your practice. Whatever feels best for you, do that. Come back to tabletop. Bring your knees back, hips width apart. And lift your knees and lift your hips up and back to downward facing dog. Straight line from your wrists up to your back, to your hips, and then your hips down to your heels. And this being our first downward facing dog, you can walk this out a little bit, stretch out those calf muscles, singular, or calves, plural. Wonderful. Let's return the heels toward the mat. Now gazing forward, arching up, and slowly step to the top of the mat. If you want to hop or float or flip through handstand, feel free. You'll be on your own. Let's just hang here a moment. I'm going to turn toward the camera so you can see what I'm doing. Just grasping opposite elbows. And just hang like a rag doll a moment. Let gravity pull through that lower back. Stretching out the back, the hamstrings, glutes. Opening up the sacrum, lower back. Super. And now let's let your fingers drape. Deep inhalation. Come all the way up. Exhale, hands through heart center. And return to your sides. We're now going to go into a variation of Sun Salutation B. We introduced Sun Salutation B in the last practice, and Sun Salutation B typically has a high lunge that we go into on each side. Instead, today we're going to go into a low crescent lunge to work a little bit more those hip flexors. So let's go to the top of our mat. We'll do 2 repetitions of Sun Salutation B. So from mountain pose, feet are together or just a couple inches apart if you've got the knobby knee issue that I have. Thanks, Mom. Rooting down through the feet. Nice, strong, rooted, grounded stance through the legs. Pushing down through into the mat. Reaching up through your spine. Feel that straight spine all the way through the crown of your head. Roll the shoulders back and down. There's a downward motion from your fingertips. Palms are facing each other, in toward the body. Fingertips toward the ground. Very strong, stable position is mountain pose from where we start. On an inhalation, you're going to set the hips back into chair. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, flat back. Exhale, step both feet back. And for this first one, let's go ahead down to our knees and lower down all the way to the ground. You can untuck your toes and just lift into a low cobra on an inhale. Lifting the shoulders up and back. Back down. Tuck the toes, lift the knees, push back to downward facing dog. On an inhale, lift your left foot in the air and let's step it up to the base of your left hand, your left thumb, and set the right knee down. Untuck the toes, come up into a low crescent lunge. Keep the legs tracking straight. Don't let that left knee splay out. Let's feel that stretch through that right side, through the right hamstring, through the hip flexors. Don't fall. Exhale, reframe the foot. You turn it back along to the left. Lower through your flow. Inhale, downward facing dog. Exhale. Exhale, downward facing dog. That was an upward facing dog we first did. Now, inhale, lift your right leg. Step it through. Foot to the base of your right thumb. Lower the left knee. Untuck the left toes. Inhale, rise up. Keep those legs tracking straight. Keep those hips straight and on an even plane from the ground. Feel it stretch through the inner thigh of your left leg, through the hamstring. You can bend back a little bit. Get a little more. All right. Reframe the foot. Step it back to plank. Lower through your chaturanga, through your flow. Upward facing dog, that's what they call it. And we all meet back in downward facing dog. On an inhale, step forward, flat back. Exhale, fold. Inhale, back to seat. See if you can lower down to that seat a little bit. Inhale, back to mountain pose. And if you have to reset your mountain, go ahead and do so. Remember, feet are close, if not touching. Rooted down through the feet. Straight up through the spine, lifting up through the spine, through the crown of your head. Palms are faced into each other. Shoulders are rolled back and down through the fingertips, back toward the ground. So you feel this pull up through the crown of your head and a rooting down through your feet and through your fingertips. And that is a good mountain pose. I'm sure wherever you're at, it's just perfect for you today. Next, let's do one more sun salutation B. On an inhale, seat back, set back into a seated position. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, flat back. Exhale, step back to plank and lower through your chaturanga. Upward facing dog. And meet back at downward facing dog. On your next inhale, lift your left foot in the air behind and step it through to the base of your left hand. Setting your knee down, your right knee down, untucking the right toes, and rising up to a low crescent lunge. You can bend back slightly, get a little bit more pull through the front of the leg and inside the right thigh. Then exhale, reframe that foot, bring it left back to join the right, and lower through your chaturanga.
Take a breath here. On your next inhale, lift your right leg in the air and step it forward to the base of your right thumb. Lower the left knee and tuck the left toes. Rise up to a low crescent lunge. Give a little bit of a lean back and feel how it changes the stretch through your left hip flexors, through that inner thigh, through the glute. Very strong in the legs. Almost gripping with your right foot. Don't let yourself fall back. Reframe the right foot. Return your right foot beside your left. Lower through your flow. And meet me back in downward facing dog. Now step back to the front of your mat. Flat back. Forward fold. And a big inhale back to your seated position. Lower just a little bit further. Let's hold it for another breath or two. Excellent. And back to mountain pose. And from mountain pose, we're going to go into a tree pose now. Challenge your balance a little bit. Rooting through your right foot. It's really starting from mountain pose, but particularly rooting through the right foot. Pick a point out in front of you to gaze. Come up on your left toes. We're going to go into a tree pose. Your tree could either be branched off here below the knee. Whatever you do, don't place your knee on don't place your foot on your knee. You don't want any extra injuries unnecessarily. Or maybe your tree is up here on your side. Root down through that right foot. Keep that gaze somewhere in front. Have your hands in front of you in prayer pose. You can branch out your tree. Whatever expression of the pose you would like. I'm in Arizona. I'm going to go cactus on you. Don't let the traffic noise and the horns honking throw off your balance. Excellent. Return that leg. Go ahead and shake your left leg out as needed. Really good for opening the hips. Let's reverse it to the other side now. Rooting through your left foot. Drive that nail down through your foot, through the ball of your left foot, into the mat, and then lift up through the leg. Slight bend in your knee might help. And your tree may come here to just next to your calf, or you may be able to get I may not be able to, get your tree above your right knee. Palms can come to heart center, or you can extend your arms up. Again, I'm going to cactus as long as I can here in Arizona. Wobbly cactus. There's a little bit of a breeze today. Turn that right knee out. Open that hip as best you can. Equal pressure from your left leg pushing out against the base of your right foot as much as you're pushing in with the right foot. Excellent. Turn that foot to the ground and shake out that right hip. Let's come now to a seated position. And from the seated position, we're going to do a cradle pose on each leg. So let's start with our right leg, placing the base of the inside of your right foot into the inside of your left elbow. And you can interlace your fingers. Knee goes above the crease of your right elbow. And just slight rocking motion cradling, rocking that right hip, feeling that ball socket joint where your femur enters into your pelvis. If you're like me, this is a really tight area of the body. So practice like this one really helps getting those hips opened up. Excellent. Let's lower that leg to the ground. Bring that right heel into your groin area. Place that right knee on the ground. Have good base. Left foot into your right elbow. Left knee into your left elbow. Go back and watch this, see if I get all my lefts and right straight. You can interlace your fingers. Sit upright through your spine. Try to tilt your pelvis forward a little bit as you rock your leg and work that ball socket joint on the left side. Very good. Let's return that to the mat. Come back to your easy seated position. Now we're going to go ahead and stand up with our feet a bit more than hips width apart, but not too wide. We're going to settle into goddess position, goddess pose. So we're going to just lower your hips back, almost like the seated position we did in Sun Salutation B, but with our legs wider apart. Keep the upper body upright, arms out to your side. And feel your hips settling in. Bounce a little bit if that's comfortable. See what you can do to settle a little bit further down into your hip sockets. Loosening up those hips. Focus on your breath. Maybe a little bit uncomfortable for you. Wherever you're able to reach, it's fine. Bring it back up. Keeping the legs wide as you had them before. Bend forward. Into the half wide leg forward fold. Just place your hands on the mat in front of you. Slight bend in the knees is helpful to keep from locking your knees out. Just a slight bend. You can walk your hands back behind a little bit. Feel how this changes the stretch in your hamstrings. Or flat on the mat in front of you, or a little bit further in front. Bending forward can increase that stretch on your hamstrings as well. Awesome. Go ahead and lift up about halfway and bring your feet in just a couple of inches. Now let's settle down into a squat. As you commit to this practice every day, right now we're talking, 3 practices a week. But if you're setting aside time for yourself every day, if you have a little bit of time that maybe you're just reading or whatever else, if you just settle into a squat for a few minutes, you're going to find drastic improvement over the 49 days of our 21 practices that we're starting off with, where this will feel really good one day. One day you'll be like, I want to sit in this position all the time. Today, maybe not. We'll go from there. Excellent. Carefully lift it back up to that forward fold. And then all the way back up to mountain pose. And from mountain pose, let's return to our seats. Back to a staff pose. and into boat pose. A couple different variations we can do a boat pose, and I'll go through 2 of them. First, we'll lean back just slightly, bring your lower legs parallel to the mat, and our arms are reached out toward our calves. You're not holding on though, just hands here to the side. Full boat pose is pointing your toes and lifting the legs straight. Let's hold it here for a couple breaths, whichever variation you choose to do. And let's lower your feet to the ground, to the mat. Just rock your hips back and forth a couple times here. We're gonna do one more. Whichever variation you did the first time, you could do the other one this time, or if you're really happy in that one, do it again. It's your practice. Do what you wish. All right, from staff pose, let's bring the feet up, lean back slightly. Palms facing each other. Keep your back straight, generally straight. The gaze is really going up, not so much at your toes. This is variation 1 or variation 2. Lifting your legs straight. And go ahead and return that. You can always hit the pause button if you want to hold that for longer. That's up to you. Coming back to the seated position. Go into a bound angle pose with hands behind. So placing the palms of your feet together, the bottoms of your feet together. Just letting gravity do the work here of pulling your knees down toward the mat. Place your hands behind you. You can tent your fingers, and by pushing forward, lifting the chest up and forward, you'll feel more of a stretch in the inside of your thighs. So between the gravity pulling your knees down and your muscles, your arms pushing the chest forward, you'll increase that stretch in this bound ankle pose. Let's take 2 or 3 deep breaths here. Enjoy the sounds of the airplanes flying over, the birds chirping in the late afternoon. Almost can't hear the traffic noise over it. Excellent. Return your hands to the front. Carefully unbind your feet. Back to your easy seated position. Roll it out a little bit as you need. It feels good there. Let's return to a staff position. And as we're seated, we're going to windshield wiper our knees, our legs, arms back behind. Feet are about shoulder width apart. Just allowing them to move side to side, getting a full range of motion of the hips from side to side and rolling through that socket joint. 3 or 4 on each side. Excellent. Touching those knees to that opposite ankle, or however far you're able to go. Did a lot of work on those hips today. to settle into a happy baby pose. Lay back, you have your feet flat on the mat, and lifting both your feet in the air. You can grab the outside of the foot. And you're pushing out against your hands with your feet as much as you're pulling into them. Feeling that stretch. In the inner thighs, the groin. Or you can put your fingers on the inside of the feet. See how that adjusts the stretch for you. Maybe you can take your legs a little wider. I bet if we did this at the beginning of practice and then measured it now, get yourself much deeper into the happy baby pose. Now, I have a 4-month-old grandson who could probably do these way better than all of us, to the point of sticking his foot in his mouth. I just do that figuratively. Excellent. Go ahead and bring your feet back in. Extend them out. Adjust yourself back on the mat now. We're going to go into a supine spinal twist. We've done this in previous practices. Let's start with both legs out in front in a staff pose. And then you can slowly lower your body down to the mat. Bring the bottoms of your feet just about 6 inches below your butt. Planting the palms on the mat. Let's lift your hips and take them to the right, just a few inches. And then lower your knees to the left. Spinal twist to the left side. You can put your left hand on top of your right thigh or knee to help pull it over. So the twist starts down here at the sacrum. Keep the spine bisecting the mat as it opens up at your chest shining forward, shining up, and then twisting to the right. Cactus your right arm out to the right, and your gaze goes out over your right fingertips. Take a couple deep breaths here. It's like wringing out your spine like a dish rag. Oh, this feels so good. Excellent. Slowly unwind all of that. Turn your hands to the mat. Lift the hips back center. Lift the hips. Move your hips to the left 3 or 4 inches. And now drop your knees to the right. Right hand goes out over the left thigh. Left knee. Starting that twist of the sacrum, all the way up the spine, that's bisecting the mat. Keep both shoulders pinned to the mat, open the chest, shine it up. Left arm cactuses out to the left, and your gaze goes out over your left fingers. And take a couple more breaths here. Slowly unwind all of that. Lift your hips back center. And now we're going to settle into our final pose, Shavasana corpse pose. Extend your legs out in front of you. Swiggle them side to side. Let's go ahead and ease the sacrum after that last twist, though, before we settle into corpse pose. Pull your knees toward your chest. You can pull your head up towards your knees, and let's just roll that out. Any tension that's left in the sacrum, let's go ahead and shake it out before we settle into corpse pose. Excellent. Any adjustments you need to make before we settle into Shavasana, go ahead and do so now. Just separate my legs, my feet by about a foot. Rock the legs side to side and just let them settle and rest where they will. Shake my hips side to side and let them balance themselves out where they're even, where my sacrum's sitting flat against the mat. Straight up through my spine, I roll my shoulders back beneath my chest. Move my arms about a foot out, my hands about a foot out from my hips, palms facing forward, spreading the fingers out too. Not even letting the fingers touch each other. No obstacles. Rock my head side to side a few times and let it settle where center is today. You've heard me say this in our previous practices. This is a very active pose. Well, corpse pose, the name doesn't make it sound very active. It makes you sound dead, but you're very much alive here. This is the time when the practice, when all the poses that we put our body through, the body is now transferring that information, that new knowledge to the mind, for new learning, for storage. It's just going to make those poses easier next time. Third practice of 2021, focusing on our hips, hip openers, lower back. Hopefully you feel some benefit from that. Go ahead and rest. Allow the body to transfer that information. Slow your breath if it's increased. If your mind starts wandering, again, start counting your breaths. Count your inhalation. It doesn't matter if it's a count of 3 or 5 or 8 or 12. Pretty impressive if it's 12. Whatever that inhalation count is, exhale that same number of counts. Allow yourself the time at the end of your practice for Shavasana. This is a very important part of your practice. Take whatever time you need. Some days you might need a little bit more than others. Try not to fall asleep in this pose. Like I said, it's a very active pose. It's an inward search. Taking in everything your body just went through. Ingraining that into your memory. Thanking yourself for putting yourself through this practice. Every minute you spend doing yoga increases the quality of your life, the quality of your health. I hope you're feeling the same benefit that I feel from doing yoga. Take the time that you need here. Pause the video if you need. play again when you're ready to continue. When you're ready, start to bring awareness back to the extremities of your body, wiggling your fingers, wiggling your toes, circling your ankles. Bring the blood back to your hands and your feet. Start to feel that energy, that awakening come back up through the calf muscles, through your thighs, through your hamstrings, your pelvis, your torso, chest, out through your arms, back through your fingertips, your shoulders, through your neck, and your head. Take an inhale, extend your hands all the way above your head. Stretch out as far as you can, point your toes. Picture little garden gnomes grabbing onto your toes and your fingers and having a tug of war. Getting that full stretch. Deep inhale. And exhale, let it all go. And when you're ready, go ahead and roll to your favorite side into a fetal position. And slowly come back to your easy seat. Resting your palms back on your thighs or on your knees or in your lap facing upward. Whatever's most comfortable for you. It's your practice. However you choose to practice is perfectly okay with me. Should be perfectly okay with you. As we said at the start of the practice, forming habits can be very difficult. Many say it takes 21 days, consecutive days, to form a new habit. So while we're spreading these practices out, I'm asking you to commit to 21 practices about 3 days apart or 3 days a week that I'm releasing these new videos. You can still commit to a certain period of time every day, either for yoga or for meditation or journaling or just quiet time, stillness by yourself. You can form a habit of dedicating that time to you. There's no one more important in the world than you and your health. So we can start by establishing that 21-day habit of setting aside time for you. And then we can extend that to a habit of incorporating yoga into every day during you time. I thank you for joining me again in this third practice. Be sure to like, subscribe to the channel, like the videos, share the videos. You can follow Arpeggio Yoga on Facebook, join the community, the conversation happening on the Facebook group for Arpeggio Yoga. There's merch for Arpeggio Yoga that you can find in the links in the show notes on the YouTube videos, and as well as links to the shirts that I'm wearing or the yoga gear that I use. Any purchase through the Amazon links and other links just helps benefit the show to be able to keep this running. So I appreciate you very much for dedicating your time and practicing with me. And I'm forming a habit as well in teaching yoga. Wanted to make sure that I stayed committed through 2021 by starting with 21 practices. However good or bad they are, I'm growing as well as a teacher. So I appreciate you sharing this time with me. So until next time, thank you very much. Be well. Namaste.